It's a week of special guests here on the Blue White Breakdown. This one is the one that I'm really looking forward to because I've known him for longer than I'd like to admit. I'm Bob Flounders. It's the Blue White Breakdown, joined by Doug Lesmerises of the Bill and Doug Show, formerly of another show, but he is on one day after Stephen Means was on from Cleveland.com. Those two know each other well.
Oh, yeah.
Tremendous writers, podcasters, deep thought guys. But Doug, I haven't talked to you in a while. I kind of thought, Doug, that I would talk to you this week, maybe at the start of the season, but I just I could have never imagined I'd be talking about some of the things we're going to be talking about on this show, with Penn State getting ready to go to Ohio State Saturday for a big noon game. Doesn't really have a big noon feel, given what has happened at Penn State. 3-4 Penn State, Terry Smith running the show. The Buckeyes look like they're playing great. Looks like they haven't missed. If anything, they're as good or as better than they were last year. But Doug, I don't want to ramble too much. Good to see you. Can you please just tell the Penn State fans about what you're doing this year, a little bit different than the last couple of years? I was on your Twitter feed. I was on your X feed, and I could see your love affair with SEC fans still continues. Congratulations.
Yeah. The SEC is still mid, no matter where I'm working or what the name of my show is. The truth is the truth. So, yeah, we had been doing Kings of the North for 2 years, where we talked about Northern college football. We talked a lot of Penn State. What was I at last year? I was at the Penn State SMU game last year. I was at the Orange Bowl. It's Penn State, Notre Dame. I did a lot of Penn State last year because we were covering all of Northern college football. We had great Big Ten and Northern college football last year. So that went away. And my partner and I, Bill Landis, a Penn State grad, Bill Landis, who covers Ohio State and is in Columbus here with me. We now have our own show. We call it the Bill and Doug Show. We also have a Substack where we cover Ohio State football. The Bill and Doug Show is on YouTube. It's on your podcast feeds. We do a lot of Ohio State, but we still do a lot of Northern college football, Big Ten college football. I still poke and prod the SEC. We still talk about all the teams that matter here in this part of the country. And we certainly talked a lot about Penn State coming into the season. And I was there, Bob. My preseason semifinals by accident were the same as last year. My 4 semifinalists were Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Texas. And so we know how that has gone. So, here we are.
Yeah, Doug, what I'd like to really talk with you about is, you know so much about Ohio State, but at your core, Doug, I know where you grew up. I know where you're from. I know where you interned or got your start.
I was at the airport in 82. I was at the airport in 82 when they came back.
You have some very strong Pennsylvania roots. I consider you to be a Pennsylvanian. I want to ask you primarily about Penn State, where they go from here, what went wrong. But I talked to Stephen about the Buckeyes. But you mentioned you were at the Orange Bowl last year, and it's been 9 months, better part of 9 months, and they did lose 2 tremendous players, Penn State. But the fact that we're talking about a Penn State team in this shape after how close they came to an Ohio State rematch in the championship game with a lot of those players back. It's, of all the 24 years, Doug, covering Penn State, it is one of the most incredible things I've ever kind of witnessed, just from a surprise factor. It was really hard to see anything close to this transpiring. And Stephen was talking about it. They lose to Oregon, and then they just cannot. They just can't get it back together, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And James Franklin's out of a job. He's not the only one, but just surreal. Is surreal a good word, Doug, or no?
Well, it's hard because it's not that you couldn't see it coming at all, right? It's that it's Penn State fans' worst nightmare, right? That it's the thing that I think that, if you felt you had a program, because I said many times, I'm sure you guys said, going into this season, I thought Penn State on the field had everything it needed. The only thing that was holding Penn State back was its past, was its James Franklin's record against top-ranked teams was the way it had played in big games. And it's like, well, I just kept citing things like Dabo Swinney at Clemson and even Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, where it's like, well, once upon a time, there were programs and coaches who it seemed like they couldn't win the big game, and then they did. So why couldn't that be Penn State? But it was something to overcome, right? You couldn't ignore it. It just was a belief of, did you think that would hold them back? Or was that something that when they had this much talent and they dedicated themselves and put the resources into it, could they get over the top here? And I thought it'd be very reasonable. Why are you held back by your past? Why are you held back by your past? And then it's like, not only are they held back by their past, like the past then shoved them in the back off the cliff, right? It's like, oh, it's over my shoulders. Like, it's my 21 record against highly ranked teams, and now I'm losing to UCLA and Northwestern as you fall off the cliff. So I still think it's quarterback play, Bob. Like, I just think it's, and it sounds like that's putting it on Drew Aller, and obviously he's a part of that, but it's the development of the quarterback. It's putting the things around the quarterback. It's about putting the quarterback in a place to succeed. And I still go back to, I'm sure you do, like the idea of when Penn State had Justin Fields committed and that brief period of time where it was like, man, is this the elevator for the Penn State program to have like a guy like Justin Fields? And then that didn't last, obviously, but you're always on the lookout for that. And I've made this comparison a lot that I think Ohio State, when Ryan Day got here, they were playing quarterbacks like J.T. Barrett, right? And J.T. Barrett and Trace McSorley are cut from the same cloth, I think, in a lot of ways. Absolute Big Ten winners, a guy you want in your foxhole. Are they NFL quarterbacks? No. Are they drop back passers who are going to kill you in the passing game? No. Can you get all the way there? Like, is that really, are you sure that's good enough? Because Ohio State fans, a lot of them still think that if J.T. Barrett didn't get hurt in 2014, if they hadn't gone to Cardale Jones, who had a bigger arm, maybe they don't win that national championship. I think they might not. But anyway, Ohio State elevated after J.T. Barrett. Ryan Day got here. Urban Meyer said, we want to throw the ball. We're not throwing the ball well enough. And when they elevated at quarterback, they went Dwayne Haskins, Heisman finalist, Justin Fields, Heisman finalist, C.J. Stroud, Heisman finalist, Kyle McCord, good, not great, Will Howard, national champion, Julian Sayin looks like a Heisman finalist.
Yeah.
Penn State, I think, tried to do the same thing after Trace McSorley. I think it's like Trace McSorley, like that. You know what that is, but is that enough? Do you want more than that? And then they went 7 years of Sean Clifford and Drew Aller and did it. It was trying to be a step more. Sean Clifford got drafted in the NFL. Drew Aller's an NFL quarterback. But did it elevate the program? Did you win more? Did you get all the way there? Did you put all the things around it? Because Ryan Day developed the holistic passing game, recruited all these receivers, decided they're going to throw the ball a certain way. He's a quarterback guru. I think Penn State tried to do the same thing, which I got, but now it's sort of like, man, wouldn't you kill for Trace McSorley? So like and it's 7 years of that it's like Sean Clifford and Drew Aller, like great Nittany Lions, right? Yeah. But you cast your lot for 7 years of starting quarterback play. And was that starting quarterback play ever good enough to get you over the top? And I think the answer is no. So that sounds like you're targeting two guys and saying like, man, you held the whole program back. That's not the intent. But did they have the right quarterback coaches? Did they have the right offensive philosophy? Did James Franklin do the right things? I think they sort of halfway went there at quarterback with the players, maybe with Drew Aller getting a 5-star kid out of Ohio. But did you go all the way there to succeed at the highest level of QB play? And when you have consecutive games against Notre Dame and Oregon that end with interceptions when the game was within reach, I think you have to start at quarterback. And I think in the end, the postmortem of the James Franklin era is they never got all the way there and getting quarterback right.
I agree with you, Doug. For me, it's quarterback is one. If there's a 1A or a 1B, it's wide receiver, just because for all the things you said about the quarterback play, I mean, they've only really had, you can count on one hand the number of scary wideouts they've had during James Franklin. They're known more for their tight ends than their wideouts, and that's tight ends are important. Tyler Warren, great player, but just no one's scaring you at all on the outside. I think Penn State fans would kill for Trace McSorley, especially in last year's game against Notre Dame. They'd kill for Michael Robinson, actually. Quite frankly, Michael Robinson, the 05 quarterback. If those two are in the Notre Dame game last year, they're playing Ohio State in the final. I don't know if they win it, but those guys were always the best players on Penn State's team in the fourth quarter of close games. They might not have always won them, but they were not losing games. I remember you were there, the 2018 Penn State Ohio State game. It was a whiteout game at Beaver Stadium. Haskins and the Buckeyes rallied late, but Trace McSorley ran for 175 yards and a touchdown in that game. Threw the ball well enough. He did everything he could, but it wasn't good enough. And in college football, you need your quarterback to be your best player late in a big game, and that just was not the case with Drew. Was not the case with Sean. All those numbers are there, but those are longevity numbers. That's what they are.
Yes.
I mean, he holds all those records because he was there. I think he was there for 6 years. I mean, I don't think you really want to hold too many program records anymore. If you're a quarterback or a wideout or a running back, it means that you stay too long, you're not good enough for the NFL. But I agree with you. They never really got the quarterback position right, and I would be really curious to see how they address quarterbacks moving forward. And maybe what they're looking for in quarterbacks, and also I have to say the wideouts. It's just ridiculous. They brought those 3 guys in, and they look like they're as bad or worse than last year's guys. There's something seriously wrong with Penn State offenses, and that's why when we talk about the next Penn State coach, to me, I think they got to go in one direction and one direction only, and I hope they do, because if they get the coach wrong, it's not going to get any better. The AD is probably going to need a new. He's going to have another job in a couple of years. So I think it's a really, really big deal. And in this climate with the NIL, Doug, there's going to be a lot of coaching turnover every year. I think more than we're used to seeing. And so you're really not maybe the destination job you think you are.
Yeah, it's hard because you could win not anywhere, but if you have the resources, again, as your fan base knows, Indiana, why does Curt Cignetti need to leave Indiana when he thinks Indiana can now be what Penn State is? Why can't it be? What's the reason? And actually, the reason is, well, as long as your NIL support and your administration and your fan base is willing to financially give you a chance to succeed with building a roster and paying coaches to stay and that kind of thing, then you don't have to go the very, 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 very top, right? The top 3 or 4 programs. I get it. But then also I would say, I just had a rant on our YouTube page yesterday. I think Penn State's a better job than LSU. Everybody's list has LSU at the top and Penn State second. The last 10 years, Penn State has a better record than LSU. Overall, they finished in the top 10 more than LSU. LSU is chaotic. LSU is peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
Penn State is consistent winning. And all you need at Penn State, as it turns out, is that I think you maybe thought Bill O'Brien was the bridge to James Franklin, and it turns out maybe James Franklin's the bridge to the next guy. And that to say from obviously the chaotic end of the Paterno era, Bill O'Brien gets you through that. And then James Franklin, in the modern era, builds a consistent winner, builds one of the 10 best programs in the country, a consistent winner. So when you look at Penn State right now and you look at what they were willing to invest this year, and that they do have a lot of good players and they have a defensive identity and they have great, there's just a couple things, but I would think a coach should look at that and see opportunity. And Brian Kelly left Notre Dame. The Notre Dame that if you look at Brian Kelly's record at Notre Dame for 12 years and James Franklin's record at Penn State for 12 years, it's practically the same. Brian Kelly left that at Notre Dame because he thought it wasn't enough, because he thought he had to go somewhere else to win at the highest level at LSU, and he fell on his face. But I don't think you have to think that today. So I think there is tremendous opportunity at Penn State for a coach who believes that, LSU's up and down, up and down. You look at LSU, they win a national championship, then they go 7-5. Penn State's 10 wins until this year.
Right.
But you take this as a blip, the pressure got too much, everything exploded. Penn State's a 10-win program. So why wouldn't you look at Penn State and think, man, what a foundation, what a baseline. There is commitment, there is history, there is tradition, there is enough of a recruiting base. We can win there. And I'm the elevator. I think there's an elevator. I think there's probably multiple elevators out there for Penn State.
Yeah.
This is not a program in disarray. This is not a program in chaos. LSU's in chaos, man. So good luck. If you want to put LSU first on your coaching list, good luck. What a mess. The governor's down there firing the coach. Did Josh Shapiro fire James Franklin? I'm not aware of it. They're having meetings with the governor. Well, the governor's, Brian, the governor would like to see you. What are we doing? Take the Penn State job. There's great opportunity here.
I think rant would be a good way to describe that, but I also think it's pretty well reasoned, Doug. So that's just your style. But yeah, I just As we continue here with Doug Lesmerises of the Bill and Doug Show, talking about the Penn State situation, maybe a lot more than Penn State, Ohio State. That takes a back seat, I think, this week. So my thing is, and I think that if you haven't already done it, you're going to do it. So now that it's done, Terry Smith's not going to be. He's the interim head coach. He's just trying to. He's just get the team to the finish line in respectable fashion the rest of the way. And it's not going to be easy given the schedule. But Doug, I wanted to ask you just a couple things about Penn State. You've already started about what you think of the job. Before I ask you about the future, you talked a little bit about it. What will you remember about James Franklin at Penn State for almost 12 years? And when he did take over, that team was a mess. They were depleted. They were out of really good scholarship players. They had a schedule where they had to play Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State. Michigan State was very good when he got here. And it was just really, really tough. Just, everyone's going to remember UCLA and Northwestern, but there's a lot more to it. Tied for the second winningest coach at Penn State. But just your thoughts on him and also his future, Doug, his future.
Yeah. So I will say that time period before Michigan got it going again against Ohio State, when Michigan was just like not competing with Ohio State in both years, I thought Michigan got in its own head against Ohio State a lot in a way that kind of currently Ohio State's getting in its own head against Michigan. And the thing I always thought was Penn State's not afraid of Ohio State.
Yeah.
And I think when you looked at the 16 win for Penn State and then the 17 and 18 games that both came down to the wire, Penn State had leads, 1-point games. And you could look at that and you could say Penn State let those get away. In-game James Franklin decisions, right? Like Ohio State miracle comebacks with JT Barrett in 17 and Dwayne Haskins in 18. And certainly there's negative to that. But like the other thing was like I thought Penn State was willing to stand in and trade punches with Ohio State at a time when Michigan was a mess against Ohio State. And I admired that. I admired that like this is like that they viewed themselves on the same level. And then you remember the year, but then like I almost thought then it went too far. And so the thing that's in terms of Penn State and Ohio State, the thing that's interesting about James Franklin losing his job here is that I actually think it could be really good for the Penn State program to not play Ohio State for the next 2 years. And that this is the last game of 33 straight seasons. Penn State has no rival. It's not a protected rivalry. They're going to take 2 years off in this. They have to play a lot. I don't think they have to play every year. I actually think it will be a great it would have been an opportunity for James Franklin, but it will be an opportunity for the new Penn State coach to define his program without the shadow of Ohio State. And I think that is a great opportunity because the James Franklin speech after the one loss in Columbus, when he said, that's an elite team, we're not elite. What year was that? That was like a
18.
big...
That was the 18 game, yeah.
Ohio State fans certainly took note of that. So I thought like, man, Penn State is not afraid to stand in here and throw punches. But then I thought that was a little bit of a bridge too far with making a direct comparison to a team in the next state that's in your conference that you're going to play every year. And I know he was trying to do it, I think, as motivation to the program, to the fans, to the administration, to say like, this is what it takes to win at the highest level. But I thought Penn State got into a little bit of a trap of now it's defined by Ohio State too much. And that can be a very difficult thing. So it's a fine line to walk. But there was a time where I thought, man, like James Franklin's not beating Ohio State, but he's not afraid of them at a time when almost everybody else was afraid of Ohio State. And I thought that mattered.
It did. And after that 18 game, the game started to get a little bit away from Penn State when they did. I mean, it was they were right there with them. And then, the 19 game, if it could have been a lot worse than it was. I think it was 28-17, but Ohio State fumbled the ball like 3 times in 4 minutes, and and then 2020 COVID year. Then you have the Clifford years, and it's just they're just slowly but surely not.
Yeah.
Then you have the Aller years where they can't move the ball at all, and there's kind of a clear separation, and I had the feeling that it just was never going to work out. He gave it his best shot. He said what he said, and everyone heard it. So he's out. He's out. What do you think about his future, Doug? Do you think he's like, we'll just go win a national championship somewhere else? I'm sure he's thinking a little bit about the SEC, but do you think he can build a program to the point where it can win a national championship? I know he can get him close, but can he?
Like that's hard. There's a great and it's one of those things. There was before Ohio State's national championship last year, there was like a great discussion in Columbus about like did Ryan Day have that edge to get you over the top?
Yeah.
Right? No one doubted that Urban Meyer had an edge. We use the word ruthless a lot in our coverage of Ohio State and Ryan Day. Was he ruthless enough? Like you've gotta be willing to like take jobs away from players or recruit over a guy or get on your staff, right? And that was just one of those things where before, when Ryan Day had 4 straight losses to Michigan and did have a national title, it was like in Columbus, it was, I think, a lot of opinions of you want Ryan Day 364 days a year because he's a good person and he's a good program builder and the players like him. But maybe like one day a year against Michigan, you want Urban Meyer. Like you want the guy with an edge. You want the guy who's willing to be a jerk. And then Ryan Day got it together and now he's a national champion and they're trying to go back to back. And I think part of it is I think he has gotten a little more ruthless over the years, right? I think he's retained his core, but I think he's gone that way. I don't know James Franklin. Is he ruthless or is he a pretty good person?
I don't think he is ruthless to the Urban Meyer degree. I don't know if he can play that card, but he's never really been in a position really where we were going to find out. I don't think he ever closed the gap to where he had a chance to maybe be the guy that was the separator, whether or not they won or lost the game. I would probably argue that he is not ruthless enough, given the way that you mentioned the 17 and 18 games and all that stuff. I don't know. I just think that he is he views himself as a program builder, but there's a difference between building a program and winning a national championship. I don't know that they're necessarily the same thing. I'm very curious to see what his next step is. I'm also curious to see, Doug, how he's perceived. He had that game day appearance before the Iowa game. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know. I think if he wants a job, he's going to have it. I just don't know who wants to hire him after this, right after this. Does he need to be? And he's a guy that I don't think he'll take a year off, because he just doesn't know anything else to do. I don't think he wants to do anything else. I think he wants to be a football coach, and that's the way he's wired. But I'll be real curious to see where he ends up, because I do think he'll have a job.
You can add me to the list of people who think like Virginia Tech would be interesting. That I think like that level of, well, it's just like, because I don't know that he's a national champ. Like if you're hell bent on winning a national championship, I don't think James Franklin's your hire.
Right.
But if you want to elevate your program and be really good and try to compete in the beat in the ACC and get to the playoff and win 10 games a year. I think James Franklin could be exactly the guy you're looking for. And it's not like, we've seen with Curt Cignetti, a lot of ways age doesn't matter. Brian Kelly's 64, James Franklin's 53, right? Like I would be nervous. I'm always nervous about catch a falling coach, which I think programs try to do sometimes. I thought I knew Belichick was going to be a disaster. I already cashed my under on North Carolina's win total this year.
I did see that, yeah.
So I knew they were going to stink. Kansas tried to do it a couple years with Charlie Weiss and Les Miles, trying to get the kind of coach that you would never get unless they had failed somewhere else. And so I'm nervous about that for programs. I think you should think more of yourself as a program than try to catch some desperate coach on the way down. I don't think James Franklin is a desperate coach on the way down. I think Brian Kelly might be. I would be much more nervous about hey, Brian Kelly's coming into shouldn't you strive for more? Try to catch somebody on the way up. I don't think James Franklin is done.
No.
But I also don't think if the governor's in your office firing Brian Kelly, that the Louisiana governor is going to be get me James Franklin on the phone. That doesn't seem exactly it either. He's maybe a step short of that. He's not a savior. I don't think James Franklin would be hired as a savior by a team hell-bent on a national title. He's a step short of that.
Yep. Doug, that was a great Southern accent. I was thinking about a Bugs Bunny character at Foghorn Leghorn. Somebody
That's
like that.
I always do. That's the only one
Sam, but that was
Seersucker
very
suit. I apologize. It's just in fun for our Southern listeners. I apologize.
That was very well done. Here's what I wanted to get to with you now, Doug. Just for the next 4 or 5 minutes, just say you're Pat Kraft. And my question is, who? There's all these coaching lists, and it's got to, he's definitely on the list. They're definitely interested in him. Brian Hartline. It's all. Who are 3 or 4 guys that, even if they're not maybe necessarily a great fit at Penn State, who are 3 or 4 guys you are absolutely calling about this job and saying, "Are you interested?" Because this is what I'm looking for in the next. This is what Penn State needs to do well. I think he can do it. And you might not be a mainstream pick, but who are the guys? What is Penn State looking for? What do they need to have? And who would be on your list?
So I do think really the number one thing for me, because I think this has held them back, especially in comparison to Ohio State, is a head coach with an offensive philosophy that the head coach, if he's not the play caller, it's clearly his offense.
Yeah.
And so that you are not reliant on an offensive coordinator leaves and now what?
Yeah.
Because I think, is it not like Joe Moorhead leaves and it's sort of James Franklin's been searching since then. As long as Ryan Day is the head coach at Ohio State, yeah, Brian Hartline's the play caller this year. Chip Kelly was the play caller last year. It's still Ryan Day's offense. You don't have to wonder about what Ryan Day is trying to do. He's bringing so I think a head coach with an offensive philosophy, because I do think you can still retain that defensive identity that's pretty well entrenched at Penn State.
Yep.
But so I would go for that. So like I think Kalen DeBoer is a bad fit at Alabama. I thought once they lost to Florida State, they were going to fall off a cliff. I've been picking against Alabama every week, but I think Kalen DeBoer at Penn State makes a lot more sense than Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. Now, they keep winning, even though South Carolina absolutely handed them the game last year and last week, and they should have lost. But like something like that. I threw out, we had this discussion on one of our shows a couple weeks ago. I threw out Lane Kiffin. Now, this is before every job in the SEC opened, but like that idea of, and what I would not be beholden to, I believe in cultural fit. Like I really, having watched the Rich Rodriguez Michigan thing from afar, I believe in that. But I also think it might be time for Penn State to not worry about cultural fit. Yeah. And so I just think like hiring a Penn State grad, hiring somebody from Pennsylvania, like I wouldn't care. And I'm not sure that I would say I almost don't want that. I wouldn't quite go that far, but it would not be at all near the top of my list of qualifications. So I think like program builder, but like entrenched offensive identity that you then can recruit to, because you've watched, right? I mean, there's some of these Pennsylvania quarterbacks that like the last couple of years, Matt Zollers, right? He just went in for Missouri last week and Bo Pabula got her. This is a double whammy for Penn State fans. Like you need the best quarterbacks in the high school quarterbacks in Pennsylvania to go to Penn State. So if you have an entrenched offensive identity, you can establish that pipeline, and then quarterbacks draw receivers, and then they draw each other in recruiting, and then you solve the main two problems. And I think a lot of the rest of it will take care of itself. So Kalen DeBoer, Lane Kiffin might sound crazy, but like that's kind of where I'm thinking. I wouldn't be only looking at people who have been head coaches before, but offensive identity is my first requirement.
Yeah, I think so. It's the idea of Lane Kiffin. It's not that he necessarily come up, but I just think if you're Pat Kraft, I'm reaching out to Lane Kiffin just because of everything you said. The guy is charismatic. He is got to be one of the top 2 or 3 offensive minds in college football. And he, you know, you look at what he does down there. They lost their starting quarterback, I think, early in the season. The guy they brought in, there's just been not only has there been no drop off, they look like they're better. So I just think the guy knows offense. In the Peach Bowl, he had an Ole Miss team that was not really. They had Jackson Dart. They played Penn State, and Abdul Carter almost killed Jackson Dart on the first series. Next thing you know, a couple adjustments are made, and they lit up Penn State's defense. They had no answers for him. They just everything he did. He just is. I think he's a great recruiter. He's great at adjustments. He can get quarterbacks to come, and if you get quarterbacks to come, you can get the 4 or 5 star wideouts that can play to come. And I think it's a lot of it is charisma, but what it really is he's a confident guy because he knows what he can do.
Yes.
I can drop him in any situation, and he's going to make your offense better. There might be a ceiling because of the talent he has, but if you give him elite resources and a budget, if you get him elite talent, the offense is going to be not the problem at Penn State while he's there. And I think that is absolutely what they need, Doug. You can find a good defensive coach, I think, and you trust him. I'm not saying it's Lincoln Riley because he doesn't really care about defense, but you need somebody that can get the right players to come to State College to go against the heavyweights. And I think it starts on the offensive side of the ball. If it's a defensive coach, I think it's just not going to be the right call.
And I do. So there's like the name, right, that I think he's popping up in the Alex Golish, right, who is the head coach at South Florida right now. His name is popping up, I think, in like the Florida search and some of the things down there. He's from Ohio. He went to Ohio State. He didn't play college football, but he was the offensive coordinator at Tennessee when they were really good, and he got the South Florida job after that. Like, you watch South Florida play, they put up a lot of points. He's got a little something to him, I think. Again, that's a little bit of a stretch. And then obviously, like, I don't know how nuts people are going for the Brian Hartline idea in State College. But again, like an offensive identity, you know what Brian Hartline, the Ohio State offensive coordinator, would bring to Penn State. I just think the top two things for me are offensive identity and charisma. Those would be the top two. And because it feels like, and is not every coaching hire a reaction to the previous coach. So it's like James Franklin, good guy, program builder, but they didn't have an offensive identity, and he wasn't going to be out there like getting in press conference fights with other coaches, right? So so then that's what you want. So but I do think, like, I would just shake it up. And here's the thing. I think it's time for, I would roll the dice. And if it blows up in your face, if you bring somebody there who's an offensive guy with no connection to Pennsylvania, no Big Ten roots, do you think he has a charisma and he just turns out to be a nincompoop, then just fire him in 3 years and pay the buyout and try again, because that's what the sport is right now. Like, but don't coaching lists drive me nuts, because a lot of times I feel like on the national level, it's just like you're doing favors for agents and everybody makes the same list, and an agent calls and says, put my guy on the list and then I'll give you a scoop. And so I don't want a guy on the list. Like, I know Lane Kiffin's on list, but like, I just don't like give me the guy who nobody's talking about.
Sure.
Because like nobody would talk about Kurt Cignetti as the JMU coach to Indiana. Now everybody wants to hire Kurt Cignetti. And the answer is there's a million Kurt Cignettis out there if you look, but often people don't look. So I do think Penn State fans, it would be smart to be prepared to be surprised. And I think a surprise would not be, oh my gosh, Pat Kraft, what are you doing? To be like, okay, let's go. Let's try this. Because I think the thing with Penn State, you watch 7 years of this type of quarterback, 12 years of James Franklin. It's good. But don't you want to try something? Like, you know what good is. I think take a swing on boom or bust. Be like, man, this is we're either going to win a national title in 4 years, or this program's going to be, we're going to be firing people left and right in 2027. It's like, okay, well, we tried, right? Go try. And I'm not being glib. I'm not trying to be like indelicate with a great college football program, but I think that's the point Penn State's at. Yeah. And that's not a shot at Matt Rule.
No.
But I just don't think the answer is Matt Rule. I don't think Matt Rule is going to solve what Penn State's been lacking.
Yeah. You know, this guy probably doesn't qualify. He qualifies for the discussion, but I would just say the last time they really, before James, nobody had Bill O'Brien on a list for Penn State. And I know it didn't work out, but there were some mitigating factors with the sanctions, and he wasn't really, I don't think he ever expected that. A lot of NFL roots, always going to go back to the NFL, and that kind of accelerated things. But, you know, that there was a world in which that could have worked in a different, you know, set of circumstances. And I think he could have really enjoyed his time. And you could say, he could be a lot of the things we talked about. He's an in-your-face guy. He is every bit of what Urban Meyer probably was at Ohio State, and he could be a little bit more ornery. But he also, the kids played very, very hard for him, and he did more with less. And I think, I think that, you know, had it been different, I think he would have been very, very successful. He certainly could have got quarterbacks. He got them to play well. He got Christian Hackenberg to play better. Yeah. James Franklin and John Donovan ever could during his time. And he had no players around him. He made Allen Robinson into an elite college receiver who had a nice NFL career. But if you get the right person with the right mindset, I think you're right. Though I don't know.
Are you in on Joe Brady?
I see. There's the only thing I would be very curious to see that. And I know that, you know, there is a little bit of a Penn State tie there. I know he was on the LSU staff. My only question with that is, if you're Joe Brady, do you really want to be a college coach where you're on call for every minute of your life and all those things? Or do you want to be maybe the heir apparent at Terry Pagula's Buffalo program, and you could be the head coach there or the OC for a long time? I just don't know if people really want to be college coaches anymore when they could be really, really, really well compensated at the NFL level, because the responsibilities are completely different. But I do think he's the kind of guy that I would be excited about.
Yes, I agree. I take a shot. Could be a tough sell, but
I
take
don't
a
even
shot.
think it's a shot. I think he fits all the things that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
He's a guy that could get people to come there, and I think he would be the guy. If he was the head coach, it would always be his offense. It wouldn't be
Yes.
I got to go get Mike Yursich and see what he's all about, and then it doesn't work, and then you got to fire him after the Michigan game.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah, I really like that. I really like that name too. And they can do it. Like, it's one of those things. Like if Pat Kraft agrees with us, there's somebody. You can get somebody, and it might even be a surprise. But if you rank those things as your most important things, I think that'd be a good start.
So, Doug, just for the people that are listening and watching, so could you just real quick walk me through a typical week in your life and kind of how you can consistently generate interesting content, whether it's in a lot of forms. Obviously, the podcasting is great, but you have a way to kind of do things that no one else is doing. I'm not just trying to blow smoke up your backside, but what's the typical weekend ever since you started doing this after you left, Cleveland.com? What's the journey been like for you?
Yeah. So it was really different. 18 years at Cleveland.com covering Ohio State. I had branched out at the end to a couple other things, but I still was around Ohio State constantly. Yeah. I said, between 2005 and COVID, I didn't miss a game. I went to every single Ohio State game that there was. So as you know, it's like you're a traveling beat writer and one team intimately. And then when we did Kings of the North and we were covering 28 Northern teams, it was just a different world to be like, man, I'm really starting to I'm knowing all these other teams. You don't know a single team as well as you did before when you're a beat writer, but I really did enjoy knowing Notre Dame and knowing Penn State and knowing Iowa State and knowing Oregon, right? And so, but now I'm kind of both, that I'm doing the specific Ohio State stuff, but we're also keeping a foot in Northern college football. But it reinvigorated me a little bit that I do now that we're, I'm back at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center every Tuesday, talking to Ryan Day, talking to players on Wednesday. There had been a couple of years there where I wasn't doing that. It is nice again to get to, to be around the people, be around a team that you get to know really well. But I really, the thing that I've leaned into the most, as you noted on my social media, is I really just think the sport has broken north-south. It's Big Ten, SEC. There is something, it's unlike any other sport in North America, where the American League and the National League don't hate each other in Major League Baseball. In the NBA, it's not like the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers are telling the Warriors and the Lakers to cram it. We hate the West, right? It's just like no other sport is built that way. But there really is a real animosity. And that the SEC and the Big Ten are partners in a lot of ways financially, because they're trying to make as much money as possible. They want to control the sport, but I don't think they're friends. I think they're strange bedfellows in a lot of ways. And then you have this third group of the ACC and the Big 12 who are looking up at the Big 2 and being mad about that. So I have really enjoyed with what I write, with what I talk about. I like leaning into that because I think it's fascinating. And I still think that the SEC ESPN power block trying to control the sport, now that they're hooked up with each other, I do think they're the two most powerful entities in college sports individually, ESPN and the SEC, and then they're together and everybody else has to fight against them. So I do think the SEC gets puffed up. I don't think the middle of the SEC is nearly as deep as many people talk about, as the AP poll would tell you that it is. I do think the Big Ten is underrated. I do think Washington's as good as Ole Miss. And you can go look at Washington beat Washington State by 40. Ole Miss beat Washington State by 7. Ole Miss is number 5 and Washington's not ranked. Why? Show me who Ole Miss has beaten. Who's Washington lost to? They lost at home to the number 1 team in the country. Then they lost on the road to one of the best defenses in the country in Michigan in a game where it was tied going into the third quarter, and then DeMond Williams Jr. threw a bunch of picks. I just like that idea. My coverage anymore, Bob, is I enjoy writing and talking about Ohio State. I enjoy writing and talking about the Big Ten, but I really enjoy writing and talking about how the SEC is a fraud. Oh my God.
I think I picked up on that enjoyment too. But
God,
you got to be
because I believe it.
Yeah, I know.
People think I'm just a troll, then it's an act. I believe it. I accentuate it and exaggerate a little bit to get under the skin of SEC fans and to also make the point that there's a lot of antagonists in the southern part of the country who do the same to the Big Ten. And I don't think there are enough people up here doing it to the SEC. So I do it on purpose, but I also believe it. And I think the playoff will bear that out. I think that Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, and Notre Dame, if the bracket allows it, I think they'll have 3 of the 4 semifinal spots.
I like
if
it.
They're not beating each other, just like last year, right? That Ohio State beat Notre Dame, Ohio State beat Oregon. Like the SEC didn't beat those teams. Notre Dame beat Penn State. The SEC didn't beat those teams. I think the best teams in the Big Ten in the North again will beat each other. The SEC won't beat them. That's what I do. That's my job. My job description is taunting the SEC 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I still have my swords here, Bob. My northern swords.
I just think it's great to have a job that you truly love, and you truly do love your job. I mean, you never disappoint. Every time I'm on your feed, it's great stuff. So it's the Bill and Doug show. You gave your good friend top billing. I like that. I think Doug and Bill would also be good, but Bill and Doug, I like that. Doug Lesmerises, Pennsylvania roots, Palmyra High School. Is that right?
Palmyra High School.
Palmyra High School, former Patriot News intern. I think I had something to do with your 21st birthday. That's getting longer and longer away.
Wow. 31.
So, Doug, before I let you go, I know you got to get to Ohio State. I want to ask you this. If you could pick one coach right now and just say, look, I want you, for the Penn State fan base, I want you to be the next head coach at Penn State. If you had that power, who would you pick to be the Penn State coach for the next 5 years? It could be anyone. Obviously, they're not going to leave in real life. But if you could just grab somebody for Penn State and say, "Look, Penn State fans, I know you're not feeling good right now. James got you close. It's been a long time since you won a national championship. I'm going to give you this guy for the next 5 years, and you could just sit back and watch the man work." Who would it be?
Man, because it's hard. Because who's the offensive guru in college football right now, right? That I think once upon a time, if that's what you want for Penn State, you would have said oh, give me Lincoln Riley, whatever. But I don't as you said, it's I wouldn't pick Lincoln Riley. I mean, honestly, based on the charisma and just juicing up the Penn State fan base, I might pick Dan Lanning. I just think what Dan Lanning is doing at Oregon and bringing that idea of we're not backing down. But in anything real, and I think Kirby Smart does a terrible job off the field with his players, but I think he has a complete handle on what Georgia does on the field. But those are 2 defensive guys. So it's it really might be Lane. It really might be Lane. I don't know. Lane Kiffin really might be the guy that I would pick. And I will say the other guy that I always mention for college openings, that's just me being fanciful, is Mike Tomlin.
Ooh.
That I always just think if he ever just he's done that with the Steelers for so long, program builder, instant splash, kids would want to come play for him. You would immediately have a culture. Now, this is not the offensive thing we talked about, right. But you plop Mike Tomlin in State College and just say give us a decade of just being a rock solid guy that people gravitate to. That would I would be endlessly fascinated by that, and I think he'd be good at it.
Yeah,
right. I think he'd be good at it, man. So that's a name I always throw out there. If he ever got tired of doing the same thing in the NFL and Matt Patricia at Ohio State, it might just be lip service, but he's an NFL guy. He's the defensive coordinator for Ohio State right now. He's talking a lot about being reinvigorated by being around these young kids and college football and all that kind of thing. Some of it is well, I just needed the job and I'm just saying what I got to say. But I think some of it can be true, right? To your point, it's it's a very different job. But if you're just getting sick of being around millionaires all the time, now these college kids are millionaires too, but it's a different vibe. I think it can. I like being around college kids. I like being around college campuses. I think it keeps us young as sports writers, Bob. So I'll just always say Mike Tomlin when a job like this comes up, and that's legitimately a call that I would make. Mike, are you sure? If you're not going to be the Steelers coach, maybe you want to be the Steelers coach for the rest of your life. But if you don't, I got an interesting thing for you.
Doug, I thought I had it all set up for you to say Ryan Day, so you could infuriate the Penn State fan base and the Ohio State fan base, and you could just run with that. Because I think that would be You know what I mean? I would love that. I think if you're a Penn State fan, forget the animosity. Like, welcome aboard, Ryan. Welcome aboard. Happy to have you, but I couldn't get you to say it.
Pennsylvania is slightly closer to New Hampshire, where he's from, than Ohio is. So, like, he'd be inching that direction. That'd be a good sales pitch. Yeah, it's a little bit closer to grandma. You know, like that kind of thing. So,
Doug Lesmerises, the Bill and Doug Show. Will I see you Saturday in?
Believe it or not, I have not gone to a game yet this year because we do a post-game show right afterwards, and I do it from the home office, and usually Bill goes to games, but we're changing it up on Saturday. We're going to do our post-game show on the Bill and Doug Show later, and I am going to go. I'm going to be at an Ohio State game for the first time this year because I said I got to see Bobby Flo, man.
That's right. Looking forward to seeing you. It should be a whale of a game, Doug. Should be a whale of a game, but happy to see you, and good luck with everything, and thanks so much for lighting up the lives of the Penn State fan base. I think it was a very informative discussion we had, and who knows what we're going to see on Saturday. But just stay well, and I'll see you in a couple of days.
Yeah, it'll be okay, Penn State fans. It'll be okay. There's a lot of good guys to hire out there. I think Penn State will get a good one. It'll be okay. And Bob, it's always great to be here. Thanks for having me, man.